In the summer of 1518, in the city of Strasbourg, a woman walked into the street and began to dance. She did not stop, not for an hour, not for a day, not for a week. And before it was over, the dancing would spread to dozens of people, and some of them would never stop at all. Strasbourg today is a quiet, beautiful city on the border of France and Germany. But in 1518, it was a city under pressure. The Holy Roman Empire stretched across Europe, and Strasbourg sat near its heart. That summer, the region had already suffered years of famine, disease, and floods. People were desperate, frightened, and exhausted. The city was a powder keg. What happened next was the spark. In mid-July of 1518, a woman named Frau Troffea stepped out of her house on a narrow street and began to dance. No music was playing. She did not seem happy. She just moved, wild and uncontrolled, as if her body had been taken over by something she could not fight. Her husband watched in confusion. Neighbors gathered. She kept dancing through the night. After 4 or 5 days, Frau Troffea could barely stand. Her feet were bleeding, and yet she could not stop. Then something extraordinary and terrifying happened. Other people began to join her. 1, then 5, then dozens. Within a month, historical records suggest somewhere between 50 and 400 people were dancing in the streets of Strasbourg, many of them collapsing from exhaustion, some suffering strokes and heart attacks. Contemporary accounts recorded that people were dying at a rate of around 15 per day at the peak of the outbreak. The city authorities did not know what to do. Their first instinct was strange by our standards. They decided that the cure for too much dancing was more dancing. They hired musicians. They built a wooden stage. They even brought in professional dancers, apparently believing that if the afflicted could dance it out of their systems, they would eventually stop. This did not help. It may have made things worse. Physicians of the time examined the dancers and declared the cause to be hot blood, a concept rooted in the medical thinking of the era, which held that imbalances in the body's 4 humors could cause strange physical behavior. The recommended cure involved rest, prayer, and eventually a pilgrimage to the shrine of Saint Vitus, the patron saint associated with nervous conditions and convulsive movement. The dancing eventually did stop, somewhere around September of 1518. And then it was over, as suddenly as it had begun. So what actually happened? Historians and scientists have been wrestling with that question for centuries, and here is the honest answer. We do not know for certain, but we do have serious, well-researched theories, and they are all fascinating. The most widely accepted explanation today comes from the work of historian John Waller, whose 2008 book, A Time to Dance, A Time to Die, examined the outbreak in careful detail using primary sources including city council records, physician notes, and sermons from the time. Waller argues that the dancing plague was a form of mass psychogenic illness, sometimes called mass hysteria, though that term is considered outdated and somewhat unfair. Mass psychogenic illness is a real documented medical phenomenon where genuine physical symptoms spread through a group of people under extreme psychological stress with no physical cause that can be detected. The body under enough pressure can produce real and sometimes dangerous symptoms driven entirely by the mind. Waller points to the specific misery of Strasbourg in 1518. The population had been living through years of crop failure, syphilis outbreaks, smallpox, and the crushing poverty that followed. The people of Alsace, the region around Strasbourg, also held a very specific religious belief at the time, that Saint Vitus could curse people with compulsive, unstoppable dancing if he was displeased. That belief, Waller argues, was the mental frame that shaped how the psychological breakdown expressed itself. The body found the one form of suffering that the culture already had a name for. A second theory, proposed by some researchers and still discussed today, involves a substance called ergot. Ergot is a fungus that grows on rye grain, which was a staple food in the region. When people eat bread made from ergot-contaminated rye, they can experience convulsions, spasms, and hallucinations. This condition is called ergotism, and it has been linked to other strange historical events. However, most historians who have studied the 1518 case closely find ergotism unlikely as the main explanation, because ergotism typically does not cause rhythmic, dance-like movement, and because not everyone eating the same bread was affected. A third angle comes from researchers in the psychology of collective behavior who note that the dancing spread specifically through social contact and visibility. People who saw others dancing were more likely to begin dancing themselves, a pattern consistent with psychogenic spread rather than a toxin or a germ. What makes the 15 and 18 dancing plague so enduring is not just that it is strange, it is that it forces us to confront how powerful the human mind is and how social and how fragile. When people are pushed past their limits, when fear and grief and hunger have nowhere to go, the body will sometimes find its own exit. The people of Strasbourg in 15 and 18 were not foolish or weak. They were human beings at the edge of what human beings can bear. Frau Troffea, the woman who started it all, steps out of history as suddenly as she stepped into the street. We do not know what became of her. We do not know what she felt. We only know that on one summer day in 1518, she began to move, and the world noticed, and for a few terrible weeks, the city of Strasbourg danced itself toward death. The music stopped, the records went quiet, and the mystery remained.